CBSE has now classified as foreign what Parliament recognizes officially. Tonight, we are not debating whether Indian languages belong in the classroom. They do. We are asking one harder question. Will this policy make every Indian child more able, or will it make some children less?
Everything we do as educators should be for the child. It should not be for the adults. It shouldn't be for the politicians. It shouldn't be for some positioning around elections and votes, or whether one policy is taken up by one state or not. We lose sight of the very people that we should be doing this for, and that is the children of India.
I do feel in the short term it will lead to inequities, because the teachers in well-equipped, well-resourced schools will be able to do it in a shorter span of time because they are well supported. Yeah. While the teachers in the rural school are going to struggle, they are going to take much longer reaching close to the teachers in the urban schools. So the gap is definitely going to widen, at least for a while.
English is so integral to Indian society now. India being a diverse country, we have so many languages. English is that one common language that holds us together at different meetings as well. I mean, even in companies, we choose to speak in English at times because we have people from all over. So I feel that we definitely need to ensure that English is not mistreated, for the lack of a better word. We need to ensure that we keep that. We have come a long way, and we have come so far that now this is an integral part of our society. We have to take advantage of that and not let it just go away.
In the north, you had an option of going for Sanskrit. In the south, it was Hindi. Did you go for a Telugu or a Kannada? Right? That's where the divide comes in, the mentality comes in that, okay, we are doing Hindi. Why are you not doing some South Indian language? And this has persistently stayed. And this is a psychological problem right now, because this policy clearly says that you are free to choose your native language. You are free to choose the other Indian language. It doesn't impose any language. However, it's the psyche which continues that it is being imposed kind of thing. So that's where the political dynamics comes in.
Just anecdotally, I was talking to a French teacher in one of the schools we work in who was planning to get married this year, who now has a very big question mark against his future. Where will he work? What will he teach? Because French in the school that he's in now will no longer exist.
Good evening. This is the Education Verdict. Straight questions, real answers, no fluff. Co-powered by Class Sathi and Sunny Enterprises. Two children, same country, same board, same circular. South Delhi private school, English spoken at home since birth. Under the new CBSE policy, her school carries on exactly as before. Nothing changes for her. Small town in Bihar, government-aided school, first generation literate family. That school has been quietly looking for reasons to reduce English in its timetable for years. CBSE Circular ACAD 17-2026 issued the 9th of April 2026, just gave it one. Signed, stamped, NCFSE approved. Same policy, completely different children. The circular gave every affiliated school 7 days to implement a mandatory third language for class 6. And it contained one line that every principal who read it would have felt. The textbooks will be made available shortly. Schools are directed to start teaching immediately using locally available books and materials. Mandatory, immediate, no books yet. And underneath the implementation chaos is a bigger question. Under the new scheme of studies, English is now classified as a foreign language, not a second language, not the associate official language Parliament recognized under the Official Languages Act of 1963, a foreign language. That act was passed because the South rose up against Hindi imposition. People died. That promise held this country together. CBSE has now classified as foreign what Parliament recognizes official. Tonight, we are not debating whether Indian languages belong in the classroom. They do. We are asking one harder question. Will this policy make every Indian child more able, or will it make some children less? Let's begin. Mark Baterip, Director of Education Skills for Us. 14 years working with schools across India. He partners with school leaders, teachers, and students to strengthen learning outcomes. He has seen what policy circulars look like on the ground, not in press release. Manjot Dhillon, Director, Invictus School, Amritsar. She runs the school. She has parents sitting in front of her every week. She knows what this policy means, not in a circular, but in a corridor, a staff room, and a parent-teacher meeting where someone is asking, what happens to my child now? Ajay Singh, Principal, the Scindia School, Gwalior, one of India's most distinguished residential institutions. He has seen education policy come and go across decades. He brings a precise understanding of what actually changes in a school versus what only changes on paper. Pankaj Agarwal, founder and CEO, Tag Hive, South Korea. He built education technology for Indian classrooms from the outside. He sees this policy not through the lens of a circular, but through learning data and the gap between what a child knows and what the economy expects them to know. I welcome you all.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
One question before we go anywhere else. Under the new framework, at least 2 of the 3 languages every student studies must be Indian. English cannot fill either of these slots. It is now classified as a foreign language. Is CBSE right to do that? Yes or no? Position only.
Yes.
Yes and no.
No.
Yes.
Okay, that's a powerful mix. The circular does not ban English. English remains an option. What it does is place English outside the 2 mandatory Indian language slots. For well-resourced schools, this changes little. For the rest, it is a different story entirely. Karnataka has 45,590 vacant teaching posts. Rajasthan has 125,000. In Haryana, Hindi teachers are already covering English classes because there is no one else. These are the schools told to start a new mandatory language subject this week, with no books and possibly no teacher. In your honest assessment, not the best case, the real world, what does this policy actually do in the schools you know? In no order. Anyone can start.
Firstly, as the only English person on the panel, I'd like to state that this is not about priority of language or one language having superiority over another. This is purely a question of how does this impact children, how does it impact schools, and how does it impact the day-to-day operations that are led and managed by principals right across the country. For me, I would just suggest that not necessarily the power behind the change, but the timing of it and what impact that has had across many aspects and the damage that has caused of the trust between schools and their parents in particular. Parents who, in most cases, have already bought textbooks for other languages. Schools who have employed teachers to teach other languages are now being faced with a mandatory change which will impact not the policymakers, but the day-to-day people who deal with parents and the children within school organisations. So for me, if this change was to be made, it should have been timed differently. Regardless of whether I agree with it or not, for me, that's a good enough reason to say that I don't agree with it. Because ultimately, at a time where India is asking parents to trust more their schools to deliver other changes, like NCF, like competency-based education, shifts which are majorly different away from traditional teaching practices, that actually for this to have been announced in a new session that has already begun has just caused damage between the trust between parents and the schools at a time when schools are really dependent on their parents' trust more than ever before.
Thank you. Thank you, Mark, for that.
I think the intent is very bold, so I advocate for the bold intent. But as Mark pointed out, the real question is the execution. Can we do a good job? But having said that, I feel that it's a good time for the reset, for schools to reimagine, rethink about the options they have in place. I think it will start a lot of conversations. So I stay in South Korea, and in Korea and Japan and other places, they teach in local language, which is Korean. And English is a layer that they teach over time. And we've seen these countries being great case studies. Maybe someone in the education department benchmarked these countries and thought that perhaps bringing native languages to the forefront will create a systemic change that will lead to further development. So I advocate for the intent, but as Mark pointed out, execution is the key here.
So I would add two dimensions to it rather. The word which is being labeled as English being a foreign language. Let's understand the dynamics. For any Indian, English is the language for the world. So English, if it is being named a foreign language, opens the access and the doors to the global world, number one. Number two, neuropsychology is very important to be understood. And the neuropsychology says that any child belonging to any country, any language, learns the best when it is taught in the native language. So there comes the power of the choice of the first language, which is the mother tongue. You just link it with the power of imagination, the power of creativity, the power of innovation, which can come in, provided we implement it correctly. So that's why I look at it in a very positive way, the first language which comes along with it. The third language which is there also is a competency-based language. It has to be seen that way. So when we are starting this in our school, we have said, let us do it 2+1. So English becomes the R1 because we are an English medium school. So that's the R1. Hindi becomes the R2 because that's the native language to that area. Then we have identified by looking at the majority of the speakers, some languages which stand out because we are a pan-India school kind of population. However, at the moment we are going with Sanskrit. What I intend to say is it's a policy with a right intent, a bold step, but it should not get lost in the dynamics of politics.
Okay, so for me, I'd like to add to what my co-panelists have said. And I'd like to go back to the parents' part of it, that whether are we breaking their trust? So as a school, I can just bring to the table what the parents actually had to say when very recently we brought them to our school. So there was a parent who was all cheers for it. He says, kudos, we need more children to know Punjabi and I'm so happy about it. And then there was another parent who goes, what about the academic pressure? This is going to lead to the CBSE board exams. Haven't you just talked about advanced math and advanced science? Now, so you feel now our children are going to have to take the exam for another language. Is that true? And yes, I think both of them are right. Because Punjabi, my native language, has now become the language only of textbooks. Not so many homes are speaking in Punjabi. At least parents are not making those conversations in Punjabi. And the only way children are getting to know about Nanak Singh or Shiv Kumar Batalvi or even the Bani of Guru Nanak is through the textbooks. And I also believe that the intent to encourage multilingualism is absolutely correct. Yes. Now going to the complexities, of course the implementations is such a challenge. For an urban school, it is far more easier to have an English teacher. For a rural school, that's quite a challenge. But for an urban school to have a teacher teach in the native language, that is a challenge. How do we do that?
Fair point.
So for me, it is a yes and a no.
Fair point. The Official Language Act of 1963 was Parliament's answer to the South's refusal to accept Hindi imposition. People died, states threatened to break away. Parliament promised English would remain an associate official language indefinitely. That promise held this republic together. CBSE is now classified as foreign language what Parliament recognized as official. Does that classification matter in practice? Or is it being overread? And is there a version of this policy that lifts Indian languages without pulling the floor from under the children who have no English at home, no English tutor, and no English on any screens except the one their school provides? So my question is, the parents loudest in support of this policy are usually parents whose children will never stop learning English. Tutors, homes, screens, the policy costs them nothing. It is a philosophical position for them. The families it hits hardest are the ones whose only access to quality English instruction is the school gate. Over 110,000 teaching vacancies across government school systems. The school that will struggle most to implement this are exactly the schools serving children with no alternative.
If we look at the policy which you have just mentioned of 1963, well, English stands as a language which will be discussed across the country because it remains a foreign language, not talking about the official language. What distinctly changes is something else. The 1968 three-language formula, which was that time enunciated, spoke about, quote unquote, Hindi imposition in the South. I'll say this with an example, right? In the North, you had an option of going for Sanskrit. In the South, it was Hindi. Did you go for a Telugu or a Kannada? Right? That's where the divide comes in, the mentality comes in that, okay, we are doing Hindi. Why are you not doing some South Indian language? And this has persistently stayed. And this is a psychological problem right now because this policy clearly says that you are free to choose your native language. You're free to choose the other Indian language. It doesn't impose any language. However, it's the psyche which continues that it is being imposed kind of thing. So that's where the political dynamics comes in.
Will this policy widen the gap between children who can access English outside school and children who cannot?
Absolutely. Like if I talk about Punjab, in Punjab, rural schools, it's very hard to find an English teacher, but then it's even harder to find a Hindi teacher. And it is such a challenge. To expect the government to be able to provide help immediately, I don't think the government would be able to do it. So it lies on the school owner. The parents in the rural areas can definitely not afford outside help. So there is quite a conundrum that we have here, and the challenge is for that student. The gap is definitely widening.
I think it's wrong for any system in education to make opportunity an accident of birth. And I think there is a moral obligation for people in education to see every child as having the potential to become a global citizen in the widest sense. Now, you could argue English as being the global language of commerce is the one thing that holds any child from any country with the potential to move around. Even on this panel, there are people that were educated in America. There were people that have gone to Harvard. There are people that have, fulfilled some of their dreams and studied abroad purely and simply because they had a common language with the place where they went. I want that for a child that's born in the middle of nowhere, the same as I want that for a child that's born in the middle of Delhi. And I think it's that. Everything we do as educators should be for the child. It should not be for the adults. It shouldn't be for the politicians. It shouldn't be for some positioning around elections and votes or whether one policy is taken up by one state or not. We lose sight of the very people that we should be doing this for, and that is the children of India.
Absolutely. I feel also that English is so integral to Indian society now. India being a diverse country, we have so many languages. English is that one common language that holds us together at different meetings as well. I mean, even in companies, we choose to speak in English at times because we have people from all over. So I feel that we definitely need to ensure that English is not mistreated, for the lack of a better word. We need to ensure that we keep that. We have come a long way and we have come so far that now this is an integral part of our society. We have to take advantage of that and not let it just go away. So I feel that while we make whatever policies possible, but we need to also be aware of our advantages and use them to our benefits.
Can I just add on something which I think we should look at with a close intent? Can't we add this value which was lost somehow in the pursuit of STEM subjects, that now is the time for languages and linguistics to actually come to the fore? Doesn't it open up opportunities?
Okay, let me bring something in. Tamil Nadu, Karnataka, Kerala and Andhra Pradesh. Every time this formula comes up, the South says no. The centre withheld over 2,000 crore rupees in Samagra Shiksha funds from Tamil Nadu for refusing to comply. The fear in Tamil Nadu is not about language. It is about power. About what a mandatory third language eventually becomes when the only practical option available in most schools is Hindi. At least 70 people died in the 1965 protests. That is not academic history in Chennai. It is a living memory. Circular ACAT 17/2026 was issued on the 9th of April 2026. Is a policy the South has resisted for 6 decades, issued in April 2026, an education decision or a political one?
I think we are, of course, education is better equipped to comment on the education side of it. But this is definitely going to lead to a schism, a political schism. And the South has been talking about linguistic hegemony. It is not just about pride, it's also about the fear that Hindi will become the monolith that it probably already is. And I can talk a little bit about Sinhala in Sri Lanka. So as a language of the majority, as the majoritarian language, it was given the top priority. But the implicit association with Buddhism cannot also be denied. So what the Tamils in Sri Lanka felt, the majority of them Hindus, they felt this was kind of an assault not only on their language, but in some ways, an effort to put down marginalize their religion as well. So we cannot completely say that this kind of a feeling will not emerge in different communities. But at the same time, I could not completely write off that Hindi is an important language. And Hindi binds us all together. So we need to tread this path very carefully, and we need to listen to the different voices. There can be no diktat that's happening. But I don't see much of a diktat in this policy.
There are options available if you look at it. So, as you rightly mentioned, it's more of a political dichotomy which is deciding the fate of this implementation, seen as the imposition of the North versus the South. And let's look at it in a different way. Why can't a language, if you go across pan-India and you have that Pandit speaking that shloka, you will never find any dialect differences. You will never find any differences of pronunciation. So Sanskrit is an option. Why only Hindi? So Sanskrit, because in South you have umpteen temples, umpteen people who are into this kind of speaking Sanskrit, they have an option. But as rightly mentioned, we need to take the stakeholders along and have a mutual understanding where this is assuaged. Otherwise, the political dynamics will kill the initiative.
I don't think India is unique in the terms of the world. Having gone around the world working in education in different countries, I don't think India is unique in the sense of education always seems to be a political football in every country. It's, and every politician in the world has an opinion about schools because they used to go to one, okay? And that's where their knowledge and understanding usually finishes. Any national statement around education has to be a politically motivated one. Classifying languages as to whether they're native or not native is a very interesting one. My panel member has talked about Sanskrit, that as being an Indian heritage language, which comes from Iran or Persia, depending on what historical point you want to measure it. So all of those things, when we actually start talking about this as a political debate, are problematic. They're very problematic. And actually, maybe because at heart I am only a teacher and I will always only be a teacher, I move away from the politics very quickly and say, what about the children? What about the benefit to the children or the disadvantage to the children? And as India stood before this announcement, I felt that we were on the right track towards having an education system that was moving towards a more modern approach in the classrooms, with children being prepared for a life of problem solving and self-determinism. Now, I'm not so sure, because language will hold children back. And it will, if they treat English as a foreign language, it will disadvantage them in terms of being able to interact with the full potential that the world has to offer them.
And also talking about the value of English to children when it comes to foundation for further studies, social mobility, career scope. What are your take on that? Do you think, this is going to hamper that particular aspect of it?
Yeah, I think it does. I've worked in India now for 14 years, and the change is beyond measure in the sense of India as a developing country. But to develop further, more assistance in terms of commerce and investment from outside of India will need to take place. And those players in the marketplace, for want of a better phrase, will speak English. And the children that we have in schools today will be the people that conduct those negotiations and solve those issues. They will need English. The need for English is a growing one, not a diminishing one. I'm not adding a value to that. I'm not sat here representing English as a language, okay? I speak 3 other languages. So I know the value of language. I'm just here to say, I think that regardless of where you're born as an Indian child, you should be able to enter into the world economy as an equal player.
I also feel that a couple of years ago, the new education policy came out, and when it was getting drafted, we were being asked a lot of questions, recommendations, and in that policy that came out, they talk about languages, they talk about foreign languages, they want schools to learn new languages, and they put a couple of languages like Korean, Japanese, French, and all that. I'm very curious how that policy draft aligns with what this circular is saying. So if you are asking schools to spread the awareness of foreign languages so that our students have more potential, more opportunities going forward, and then you are limiting that opportunity of learning new languages, foreign languages in the school with this policy, I think there is a conflict, there's a misalignment, and we need to understand more, ask more. I hope there is a corrigendum that comes out that explains or gives more flexibility to the school owners, decision makers to navigate in this times.
Great. Karnataka, 45,600 vacancies. Rajasthan, 125,000 vacancies. Bihar and UP, among the worst teacher deficits in the country. 7 days to implement a new mandatory language subject. No books yet, no teacher pipeline announced, and R3 will not touch board exams until 2030 to 2031. The urgency is now. The accountability is in 5 years. The children in under-resourced classrooms carry the risk in between. Is Indian school education operationally ready to do this well? And what happens to the children in the gap?
So some schools, yes. Some schools, no. And it requires, 5 years is a very short time. And the best part is that the government will stay the same. We'll hopefully have the same government in this next 5 years. But it requires a lot of planning, curriculum alignments. I see as a humongous task. India being a big country with so many variations, I'm not sure how we can do this. So we definitely have to be more practical, more realistic in setting our timelines. This definitely will require a rethink. And I hope that intent is super solid. We want to become Viksit Bharat. We want to do all these things going forward. We always put a date to it so that it's all there. But practical realities are tough. While we aspire and we will work hard to achieve, we need to be also aware that we need to check how much we have moved and do we have enough bandwidth. We don't want to execute it completely wrong. We'll just, in education, if you do a damage, it's difficult to do a damage control. Once damage is done, once kids have gone through the process, there's no U-turn. So be very, very careful. This is a one-time opportunity. So we have to be very cautious about making choices and the policies.
Well, the CBSE has been a body which executes the 10th and the 12th exams, right? And very nicely, they have given guidelines to conduct 6th, 7th, 8th to the liberty to the schools, right? So thankfully, we have a syllabus. We have the opportunity for the teachers to actually go paperless and textbookless. We have always been stuck on textbooks. I need the education fraternity to come out of it and create your own material. And also, we have an option and an opportunity that this is the time for a summer break. By the time we come back, there would be maximum chances that the books are available. However, as an educationist, I would look more into what we can create for 6, 7, 8 because that's not a board examination. 2 languages we should focus on as complete 7 lessons a week. The third language can be diluted in the intent because 6th is where they have introduced. And that same formula we go out to the boards, right? The weightage has been decided accordingly. So English and one, we should focus. Helps to conserve the, the importance of the two languages, English included, also allows you to learn one language. To close this statement, I will say, can a child who has learned Sanskrit be able to order food in Sanskrit in 1 year? If he has done that, he has learned the language.
Mark, do you agree to what Ajay just said?
About textbooks, absolutely, definitely, yes. But that's another contradiction in NEP, is the fact that we have a competency-based desire being delivered by textbooks, which are in themselves not activity-based learning. So there are contradictions there, but I would agree that actually teachers are creative people and they need to be given the freedom to actually teach in the way that they see fit for the learners that they have in front of them. No two lessons are the same. No two group of children are the same. So there needs to be, now I will say something in support of CBSE, and that is, in a country of this size, when given the task to implement anything, you have to standardize. And I think the textbook has been a source of control rather than anything else. And in the desire to standardize provision, I don't think it's worked. And I don't share the confidence that any textbooks around the 9 languages that are being recommended will be available anytime in the next 6 months. Every principal in India know that the NCRT textbooks for core subjects are only just being made available in soft copy form for this session. So why we would have any confidence that new textbooks are going to be available, I don't even know that the authors of those textbooks exist in some cases. Certainly with a background in education and teaching, because nobody's been teaching those subjects. So there are so many, I said right at the beginning, I'm not here to debate the decision. For me, as somebody that works with leadership colleagues up and down the country, I just think it is grossly unfair for a change to be made within a session when parents have paid money for textbooks, as I said earlier. And just anecdotally, I was talking to a French teacher in one of the schools we work in who was planning to get married this year, who now has a very big question mark against his future. Where will he work? What will he teach? Because French in the school that he's in now will no longer exist. And that, I think policymakers need to understand that if you've got a strategic decision to make for political reasons, yes, whatever, that is education, you have to have more sympathy towards the operational outcomes. And I think it's that I question most, because it disadvantages every single stakeholder, whether that's within the school or within the family. Everybody, if you rush a decision like this, everybody becomes a loser.
For me, I think that it's unfair also for the teacher. Because we do glorify the teacher and we make them believe in this, the whole idea of being superheroes. But the superheroes do not have enough time when the session is on. They have other responsibilities in school, and to just expect them that, okay, you have to maybe stay outside school time or sacrifice a bit of your summer vacation because you have to work on this. I really think that is not humane enough. While they will do it, and while I also support the long-term ambition and intention behind the policy, I do feel in the short term it will lead to inequities, because the teachers in well-equipped, well-resourced schools will be able to do it in a shorter span of time because they are well supported. While the teachers in the rural school are going to struggle, they are going to take much longer reaching close to the teachers in the urban schools. So the gap is definitely going to widen, at least for a while.
I hear you. And let me name what this conversation is really about. Is a school for cultural identity or economic mobility? The honest answer is both. And the problem with this policy is that for millions of children, those two things are currently in direct tension. The research on mother tongue education is real. Multilingualism builds cognitive flexibility. The intention behind this policy is not uninformed, but English proficiency in India is one of the most powerful predictors of economic outcomes across every income level. The child who loses access to quality English instruction does not just miss a subject, they miss a ladder. CBSE cannot resolve that contradiction with a circular. What a circular can do is shift which child bears the cost of it. That question now belongs to every school leader in this room. Let's continue, and the final round that I want to speak about is we started with a yes or no. You have now heard the evidence, the numbers, and the histories. Hold your position or change it and give me one concrete thing you are going differently in your own school because of this policy, not what the government should do, what you are going to do. Each panelist should give me a verdict and commitment.
So I'd really want to bring our attention to the ESSER report 2024, according to which our grade 3 children, 27.1% of them could not read proficiently a grade 2 level text. What we should be thinking about is learning outcomes. Are we thinking about quality education, or is it lip service? That is something that if a teacher in the current scenario is not able to help the child achieve higher learning outcomes, we add another language for whatever reasons. Are we helping the teacher? Are we helping the child? That is definitely a thought. And what I'd be doing in my school is supporting my teachers. I believe if I support my teachers, they will be able to find a way to support the student. And also stay connected to the parent, because the parent is as scared, as unsure, as confused as many of us may be.
I think Manjot's point is so valid, and I was thinking to skip this question's answer because I don't run a school, but actually I work with around 5,000 schools globally in 7 countries, and India stays as our centerpiece, most area of impact. And Manjot talked about learning outcomes as one of the core focus areas, and ESSER reports talks about grade 5 children, half of them not able to have grade 2 level competencies. I think to be able to solve this problem and focus on learning outcomes, what we commit to do is build more friendly technology. So we build technologies like Class Sathi, which is an assessment centered, a quick assessment center, formative assessment center technology that allows teachers to quickly check for understanding, with the class that they are teaching in. We commit to build more easier technology, and things like no internet is not a problem, and ensure that teachers who don't even have the technological flair can use the product more easily and report those learning outcomes data more frequently. We don't have to have a ESSER report come to us and say that this gap is there. It's already too late. Why can't we do ESSER-like outcome happening every day with technology? And that is what we enable. So I commit to the panel here and to Ravi, to you as well, that we will keep on building this technology that we have built and ensure that schools and teachers and parents, all these stakeholders are getting value from that.
So looking at the school, what we did after the release of this entire note from the CBSE is first to absorb the meaning of what it actually visualizes. So it took us 2 days with the entire linguistic faculty, and we do have Sanskrit as a language in our school. So we decided that we'll keep R1 as English, decision point, R2 as Hindi. That's the native language spoken there. And we went for R3 as Sanskrit. And then we also took a conscious decision with the teachers that we will give 7 lessons and more predominance and impetus to English, Hindi. Sanskrit becomes that third language where they should develop some competencies as mentioned. So what are those competencies? Ability to converse, ability to understand text, ability to hold a conversation at the initial level. If these competencies decide the teaching, I think that is what we are looking at, the learning outcomes. We are not looking at the text. Recently, we released a book, a collection of poems by students and staff. Let's use that in the curriculum. Curriculum doesn't say that you need to teach grammar through Wren and Martin. It says we need to teach grammar. Why can't a novel of class 6 be used to teach grammar? So we have identified one novel. We have identified the poems which the students have written. Same goes for Hindi. It's all about the LOs which the CBSE has come out with, that there is a learning outcome and that should drive teaching, not the syllabus. Curriculum is the main thing. The pedagogy is the main thing. And that's what we are focusing on.
Yeah, and I'd reflect a number of those points. Fundamentally, schools are for children. They're not for adults and they're not for politicians. And I would be working with all the schools that I work with to actually find a voice through their sahodiyas, through their organisations, through their relationships with each other, to actually find a voice that gives real feedback to the CBSE and even the government themselves. There are so many schools in this country that are run by politicians. I don't understand why voices can't be heard. And I think as educators, at whatever level, as owners, as principals, even as teachers, we have a moral obligation to our children to actually become their voice in this debate, because it's far too important for their futures to just ignore it and just do as we're told. There's far too much doing as we're told in this country, it would seem. And the respect that we have for one another should be there and be maintained, but we should respect each other as professionals, and professionals have an obligation.
The girl in South Delhi will be fine. The boy in Bihar deserves the same chance. Circular ACAT 17/2026 is 3 pages long. Mandatory, immediate, no textbooks yet. As I shared, Karnataka has 45,600 vacant teaching posts. Rajasthan has 125,000. They're asking those schools to add a new compulsory subject this week for every class and child. The intention is not the problem. Multilingualism matters. Indian languages belong in Indian classrooms. The problem is the gap between the circular and the classroom, between what this policy promises and what the child in Bihar will actually receive. He's not asking whether English is foreign or native. He's asking whether his school is ready. Based on everything we have heard tonight, that is still an open question. School leaders, it is now yours. Hold the government to the promise, not just the policy. And drop your views in the comments. The real conversation starts after this ends. This is the Education Verdict. Straight questions, real answers, no fluff. Co-powered by Class Saathi and Sana Enterprises. Good night.